Yusuf Rahman stopped mid-step, his boarding pass frozen halfway to the flight attendant's hand. Around him, first-class passengers on Crescent Air Flight 229 turned to stare. Someone muttered under their breath. Holly Pearson, a 15-year veteran of the airline, stood in the aisle, blocking the way. Her eyes swept over Yusuf's crisp navy suit, polished leather shoes, the platinum cufflinks glinting at his wrists. None of it mattered. Her gaze lingered on his neatly trimmed beard, the kufi cap on his head, the prayer beads looped around his fingers. In her mind, he didn't belong here. "Excuse me." Yusuf's voice was calm, though his jaw tightened. "You heard me," Holly replied, her smile thin and rehearsed. "Economy is that way." A woman in seat 3C raised her phone, live streaming to thousands. Comments flashed across her screen. "What the hell? This is blatant discrimination. Name the airline, I'm boycotting." Yusuf held up his boarding pass. Seat 1A. First class. Paid in full. "There must be some mistake," Holly said, loud enough for nearby rows to hear. But Yusuf Rahman wasn't just another passenger. Holly plucked the ticket from his hand, studying it like it might dissolve into dust. "Did someone else book this for you?" The question hit like a slap. Yusuf's grip tightened on his briefcase. "I booked my own flight." "Really?" Her tone dripped disbelief. "Because these seats cost more than most people make in a month." The livestream count ticked past 60,000 viewers. The comments were boiling over. "Oh no, this is Islamophobia 101. He's Muslim. That's why she's doing this." Yusuf reached into his pocket and slid out his black Centurion card, the kind that came with a $10,000 annual fee and a $250,000 yearly spend requirement. Holly barely glanced at it. "You can get fake ones of those online. It happens all the time." A ripple of discomfort passed through nearby passengers. One man in 2A shook his head. Another began filming openly. Yusuf's phone buzzed. "Amira, HQ, urgent." He silenced it. Then again. And again. "Busy day at work," Holly said, her smirk edged with something sharper. "Let me guess, you run some little company?" She laughed, and it was an ugly sound. Gate supervisor Elena Morales arrived, summoned by Holly's radio call. 20 years in the job had taught her how fast a crowd could turn, and the dozens of phones pointed toward them told her this was already spinning out of control. "What's going on?" Elena asked. "He's claiming 1A, but..." Holly's voice lowered just enough to sound conspiratorial, while still carrying to the row behind. "You know what I mean." Elena did know, and hated that she knew. But protocol was protocol. "Sir, I just need to verify your purchase." "Standard for whom?" Yusuf's voice stayed level, but there was heat in his eyes. "Do you verify every first-class passenger, or just the ones who look like they might be going to Friday prayers?" Elena's tablet lit up with Yusuf's account. Executive Platinum since 2019. 87 flights last year. All first class. All paid in full. Not a single red flag. But Holly's doubt had already taken root. "I'm calling security," Holly said loudly. "This passenger is being disruptive." "Disruptive?" Yusuf rose slowly, his 6-foot frame filling the aisle. "I'm sitting in my assigned seat, ticket in hand, speaking at a normal volume. What exactly is disruptive?" Security Officer Mateo Alvarez arrived, scanning the scene. Well-dressed man. Valid ticket. No aggression. "Is there a problem?" Alvarez asked. "Ask them," Yusuf said. "They think I don't belong here." Mateo's tone cooled. "Ma'am, is his ticket valid?" "Technically, yes," Elena admitted. "But we're still verifying." "Verifying what?" Alvarez's voice sharpened. "Either the ticket's valid or it's not." The livestream hit 89,000 viewers. The hashtag Crescent Air Bias began trending. "Sir, I'm going to need you to move to economy," Holly said finally. The person meant to be in 1A might show up. Yusuf's phone buzzed again. His calendar flashed. Board meeting, 9 a.m. 17 missed calls. In his briefcase, the corner of a thick contract peeked out. A document with Crescent Air's letterhead and the words partnership agreement in bold. "Miss Pearson," Yusuf said quietly, "you're making a mistake." "The only mistake," she snapped, "is letting people think they can buy their way into places they don't belong." The cabin went silent. Even the hum of the engines seemed to dim. Captain Robert Hayes stepped out from the cockpit. "What's the holdup?" "Passenger issue," Elena said. "We'll have it resolved in a moment." Yusuf looked at them. The flight attendant, the supervisor, the security officer, the captain. for people united in questioning his right to be in a space he'd paid for. His watch read 7:01 p.m. He had 9 minutes before the situation shifted entirely. "I'll give you one final chance," Holly said. "Economy, or off the plane." Yusuf opened his briefcase and pulled out the document. "Miss Pearson," he said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade, "I think you should call your CEO." She smirked. "Sir, you can call whoever you want." Before we proceed further, I want to take a moment to invite you to be part of something bigger than just this story. If what you've heard so far has made you feel, think, or reflect, even for a moment, then hit that like button so more people can discover voices like these. Subscribe to Muslim Stories Unheard so you never miss the next untold truth waiting to be heard. And if you've lived through moments of bias, resilience, faith, or triumph, or even witnessed them, share your experience in the comments. Let's get back to our story. Rules are rules. Yusuf slid a single sheet of paper from his briefcase, Crescent Air corporate letterhead, embossed in silver. Across the top, partnership agreement, $847 million. "Tell him," Yusuf said evenly, "that Yusuf Rahman from Al Noor Holdings is requesting immediate resolution." But Holly Pearson wasn't listening. She'd already decided who he was, or rather, who she believed he couldn't possibly be. Security Officer Mateo Alvarez stepped forward. "Sir, you need to comply or—" "In about 8 minutes," Yusuf interrupted, his tone sharpening. "You're going to wish you'd handled this differently." The air shifted. A ripple passed through the watching crowd. Customer Relations Manager Daniel Cortez burst through the boarding gate, clutching his tablet like a shield. 15 years with Crescent Air had taught him to recognize a full-blown crisis, and the forest of raised phones all pointed in one direction told him exactly where the problem was. "What's going on?" His voice was steady, professional. "Daniel, thank God," Holly said, stepping toward him as if they were allies. "This passenger is being difficult about his seat assignment. I think we need to." "Let me see his ticket," Daniel said. Yusuf handed it over without a word. Daniel scanned the barcode, and data bloomed across the screen. Executive Platinum member, flawless payment record, VIP corporate designation, and something else. Something that made his stomach clench. "Mr. Rahman." Daniel's voice cracked almost imperceptibly. "I sincerely apologize for any inconvenience. Your seat is absolutely confirmed." Holly blinked at him, baffled. "Daniel, you don't understand. I have concerns about this passenger's." "Miss Pearson." Daniel's tone went cold. "Report to the galley. Now, we need to discuss your approach to customer service." But Holly's pride bristled under the public challenge. 15 years on the job didn't crumble in 8 minutes. "I stand by my assessment," she said loudly, her voice carrying through the cabin. "Something about this situation doesn't feel right." The live stream from 3CS phone surged past 150,000 viewers. Comments poured in. "She's done. This is the clearest case of Islamophobia I've ever seen. He's about to drop a bombshell. I can feel it." Yusuf's phone lit up with another wave of calls. "Amira, HQ, Legal Department, urgent. CEO's office, priority. Board Secretary, immediate." He declined each one, deliberately, almost ceremonially. Holly's smirk faltered. "Popular man," she said, forcing a light tone. "Hope it's nothing important." "Miss Pearson," Yusuf said, locking eyes with her, "every call I'm ignoring right now will have to be returned tomorrow. After my morning meeting." Something in his tone made her take a small step back. Mateo's radio crackled to life. "Unit 47, we're getting calls from corporate headquarters. Status update." "Copy," Mateo replied. "Situation is fluid." Around them, the tension felt almost physical. Passengers leaned forward. Flight attendants huddled near the galley. Even the gate agents had stopped scanning boarding passes to watch. Daniel's tablet pinged with an incoming video call. His face went pale. It was Crescent Air's CEO, Mahmoud Karim. The CEO never, ever, called gate staff directly. "Sir," Daniel said carefully to Yusuf, "is there anything at all we can do to resolve this situation?" "You can start," Yusuf replied evenly, "by treating paying customers with basic dignity." Holly gave a bitter laugh. "Dignity is earned, not bought." The words hit like a live wire. The cabin fell into an unnatural stillness. The live streamer's voice whispered into the silence. "Y'all, I've never seen airline staff this scared. He's got serious pull, and they know it." The viewer count ticked toward 200,000. The hashtag Crescent Air Bias climbed into the national trending list. Local news crews were already en route to Jinnah International. Yusuf's hand rested on the edge of the thick document in his briefcase, the one with the numbers that would change everything, but he didn't pull it out. Not yet. Holly's eyes followed the motion. More paperwork. Sir, I don't care what certificates or complaints you have. Policy is policy. Miss Pearson, Yusuf said quietly, you keep mentioning policy. What's your policy on treating corporate partners? The question hung in the air like incense smoke, heavy and inescapable. Daniel Cortez's fingers trembled as he typed on his tablet. Yusuf Rahman, Al Noor Holdings. The search results made his stomach lurch. Corporate contract, classified VIP level. Annual flight volume, 12,000 plus bookings. Account status, priority 1. CEO approval required for any service changes. Special notes, board member, handle with extreme care. The passenger Holly had been harassing controlled nearly 30% of Crescent Air's corporate revenue. Sir, Daniel's voice cracked. Please accept our most sincere apologies. Is there any way we can? Yusuf's phone lit up, 63 missed calls. A soft calendar chime sounded, board meeting tomorrow, final approval required. Holly heard the reminder. Board meeting? Let me guess, you're some kind of middle manager who thinks he's important. The insult landed like a physical shove. Captain Robert Hayes stepped from the cockpit, drawn by the commotion stalling his departure. 30 years of flying had taught him to read situations in seconds. For airline employees cornering one passenger, cameras everywhere, management sweating bullets. What's the holdup? The captain asked. Passenger verification, Holly said confidently. Almost resolved. But the captain noticed things others didn't. The Rolex Submariner at Yusuf's wrist, the Italian leather briefcase, the Platinum Centurion card visible in his wallet. And most telling of all, Daniel Cortez's pale, tight-lipped expression. Ma'am, the captain addressed Holly, is the passenger's ticket valid? Technically, yes. Then what are we discussing? The intercom crackled to life. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief delay due to a gate issue. We'll be airborne shortly. Passengers groaned, but the first-class cabin remained locked on the unfolding drama. Yusuf's briefcase sat slightly ajar. The corner of a document peeked out. Thick letterhead, the words Crescent Air just visible. At seat 3C, the livestream camera zoomed in. Chat, I think that's some kind of contract. Can anyone make out what it says? Speculation poured in. Lawsuit papers? Corporate partnership? Oh, this is big. Holly felt the walls closing in. Daniel looked ready to be sick. The gate supervisor had vanished entirely. Even Officer Mateo Alvarez shifted uncomfortably. But to admit a mistake meant admitting the ugly truth, that this wasn't about a seat. It was about a beard, a kufi, a Muslim name. And confronting that truth meant facing consequences. So she doubled down. Mr. Rahman, you have 30 seconds to move to economy or leave this aircraft. Final warning. The ultimatum cracked through the cabin like a whip. Yusuf looked at her with something close to pity. Then slowly, he reached into his briefcase and withdrew a single sheet of paper. Crescent Air corporate letterhead. Partnership agreement. $847 million in bold black ink. But he didn't hand it to her. Not yet. Miss Pearson, he said softly. You asked who paid for my ticket. He rose to his full height, the document dangling loosely in his hand. The answer, he said, might surprise you. The silence was absolute. 200,000 livestream viewers held their breath. 160 passengers leaned forward. For crew members froze in place. Yusuf's phone screen lit again. 71 missed calls from Crescent Air HQ. Yusuf's calendar glowed on his phone. Tomorrow, Crescent Air Board meeting. Fleet expansion vote. $2.3 billion to $300 million final allocation decision. Holly's eyes stayed fixed on the document in his hand, her face paling as the edges of reality closed in. She knew she'd made a mistake. She just didn't know how big yet. The Crescent Air partnership agreement trembled slightly between Yusuf's fingers. The gold-embossed letterhead caught the cabin lights, but from where she stood, Holly couldn't read the fine print. Miss Pearson, Yusuf said, his tone carrying a weight that cut through the cabin. You've asked repeatedly about my ticket. Let me clarify something. On Daniel Cortez's tablet, an emergency call from CEO Mahmoud Karim flashed. Daniel's thumb hovered over the screen, then, with shaking hands, declined it. I didn't buy this ticket, Yusuf continued. My company's corporate account did. The same account that's been one of Crescent Air's most profitable partnerships since 2019. Holly's brow furrowed, defiance giving way to confusion. What company? Alnor Holdings, Yusuf replied evenly. The name meant nothing to her, but Daniel's face went chalk white. Daniel? Holly asked, searching for footing. What's Alnor Holdings? Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper, like a man announcing his own firing. They're our largest corporate client. The words hit the first-class cabin like a shockwave. From 3C, the live stream surged past 275,000 viewers. Oh my god, chat, plot twist. She's about to get wrecked. This is actually insane. Holly's throat tightened. How large? $847 million annually, Yusuf said calmly, as if reciting the weather. Gasps rippled down the aisle. The businessman in 2A gave a long, low whistle. Holly's voice cracked. That's not possible. You're just a... She couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't say you're just a man in a kufi, just a Muslim traveler, just someone who looked like you didn't belong. I'm just what, Miss Pearson? Yusuf's voice was quiet steel. The question hung unanswered because the truth was too ugly to speak aloud. Captain Hayes stepped forward now, fully understanding the weight of the situation. Sir, if you're with Alnor Holdings, then you're the CEO, Yusuf finished. The man who books 12,000 flights a year with your airline. The man whose company employs 340 executives, all platinum tier. The man whose business keeps Crescent Air's profit margins where they are. The silence was absolute. Even the engine's hum seemed to fade. Holly's world tilted violently. For the last 25 minutes, she'd been publicly humiliating the man who controlled nearly a third of her airline's corporate revenue. But she stopped again, her tongue refusing to form the words that had fueled her decisions all along. Officer Mateo Alvarez stepped back instinctively. The gate staff slipped toward the jetway, avoiding eye contact. Even the live streamer lowered her phone for a moment, stunned. On Daniel's tablet, 19 missed calls from headquarters flashed. His fingers trembled as he typed. Code red, corporate VIP incident. Immediate intervention required. Yusuf reached back into his briefcase and produced another document, tomorrow's board meeting agenda. Miss Pearson, he said, his voice razor-sharp in the quiet. You asked about my morning meeting. The paper in Yusuf's hand showed Crescent Air Board of Directors. Fleet expansion approval meeting. $2.3 billion to $300 million aircraft purchase decision. Holly read the words with mounting dread. You see, Yusuf continued, as CEO of Alnor Holdings, I hold the deciding vote on the largest expansion in Crescent Air's history. The revelation struck like lightning. She hadn't just insulted a high-value client. She'd put the airline's future on the line. From 3C, the live streamer whispered into her mic. Chat, this flight attendant just discriminated against the one man who can make or break Crescent Air. This is divine-level karma. Her viewer count surged past 325,000. Comments exploded in real time. 2.3 billion, 300 million, bruh, her face is priceless. Watch Crescent Air stock tank tomorrow. Somebody's getting fired on the spot. Yusuf's phone buzzed again. HQ emergency. He let it ring out. 94 missed calls, he announced to the cabin. I can promise you, several of my board members are watching this live stream right now. Holly felt the walls closing in. Let me explain what just happened, Yusuf said, his voice carrying over the silent hum of the aircraft. For 25 minutes, Miss Pearson questioned my right to be in first class. She suggested I didn't pay for my ticket. She implied someone else was footing the bill. She treated me like a security risk because I'm Muslim, because of my kufi, my beard, my name. The words landed like hammer blows. No one could deny it. 160 passengers had witnessed it, and more than 300,000 people had watched it live. I was just following procedure, Holly whispered desperately. Really? Yusuf's voice cut sharper now. Show me the procedure for questioning Muslim passengers about their ticket purchases. Silence. Show me the policy that requires verifying whether Muslim customers can afford first class. More silence. Show me the training that teaches staff to assume passengers in religious dress don't belong in premium cabins. Holly's defense cracked completely. There was no procedure, no policy, no training, just bias. Pure, undeniable bias. Captain Hayes cleared his throat nervously. Mr. Rahman, on behalf of Crescent Air. Captain, Yusuf interrupted, your company's CEO has been calling me for the past hour. I think he'd prefer to address this himself. As if on cue, Daniel Cortez's tablet erupted with an emergency video call from CEO Mahmoud Karim. His fingers trembled as he accepted. The CEO's face appeared on screen, visible to anyone nearby. "Mr. Rahman," Karim said without preamble, "I've been watching the live stream. I'm personally flying to Karachi tonight to meet with you." Yusuf remained seated, calm as stone. "Mahmoud, that's not necessary. We can discuss it tomorrow morning, right before the board vote." The threat was quiet, but unmistakable. Karim's expression paled. "Sir, please tell me what Crescent Air can do to make this right." "That depends," Yusuf said evenly, "on whether your company believes this kind of treatment is acceptable customer service." Holly's stomach dropped. The CEO of Crescent Air was personally apologizing to the man she'd been humiliating, and doing it in front of the passengers she'd just tried to remove. "Miss Pearson," Karim's voice hardened, "you are suspended immediately, pending a full investigation." The words landed like a physical blow. "Furthermore," Karim continued, "Crescent Air will implement company-wide anti-bias training within 30 days, review every discrimination complaint from the past 5 years, and establish a direct hotline for reporting incidents like this." Systemic change was being announced in real time. But Yusuf raised a hand. "Mahmoud, those are good first steps, but I haven't told you the most concerning part yet." Everyone leaned in. Even Karim, on the screen, looked tense. "If Miss Pearson treats me this way, a CEO with obvious resources, influence, and legal teams, how does she treat Muslim passengers who can't fight back?" The question cut to the bone. Yusuf wasn't just exposing her personal bias, he was pointing at the rot in the system. "How many other passengers have you harassed because of their religion?" Yusuf asked, his voice low but carrying. "How many have you humiliated for wearing a headscarf? For praying quietly at the gate? For having a name you can't pronounce? How many have you driven away from this airline?" CEO Mahmoud Karim's face on the tablet grew grave. "We will be conducting a full audit of Miss Pearson's service record," he said firmly. Yusuf gathered his documents with deliberate precision. "Mahmoud, I need to think about tomorrow's vote. The board is expecting my recommendation on the fleet expansion." The implication hit like a loaded gun on the table. Crescent Air's future growth depended on his approval. "I'll be making my decision," Yusuf continued, "based on whether I believe this company truly values all its customers equally." Karim nodded gravely. "Mr. Rahman, you have my personal guarantee that we will address this thoroughly." Yusuf ended the call and looked around the cabin. Passengers sat frozen. Flight attendants avoided his gaze. This was already the most documented case of airline discrimination in history, and it had unfolded live in front of hundreds of thousands of people. But he wasn't done. "There's one more thing," Yusuf said quietly. Holly's eyes lifted, dread pulling at her features. What could possibly be worse? Yusuf pulled out his phone, swiping to his calendar. 3 entries stood in sharp black text. 9 a.m., Crescent Air Board vote. 11 a.m., Skylink Airlines partnership meeting. 2 p.m., United Sky expansion discussion. The final bombshell dropped. Yusuf wasn't just Crescent Air's biggest client. He was shopping for a new airline partner. The revelation hit like a detonation. If Al Noor Holdings pulled its $847 million annual contract, Crescent Air would take a blow it might not recover from. Holly finally grasped the full magnitude of her mistake. She hadn't just humiliated herself. She had possibly destroyed her company's competitive position. "Miss Pearson," Yusuf said, each word measured, "you asked who paid for my ticket. The answer is the company that may not be paying for any more tickets after tomorrow." The threat hung in the air like smoke. 350,000 livestream viewers had just witnessed the dismantling of one of the most public displays of corporate Islamophobia in history. The silence was absolute. Yusuf sat in seat 1A like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. Around him, airline staff stood as if awaiting their professional execution. Holly Pearson was frozen in place, finally understanding she had declared war on the wrong person. Yusuf pulled out his phone and dialed a number from memory. The line connected instantly. "Mahmoud, it's Yusuf," he said. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a man who knew every ear in first class was listening. "Yes, I'm still on the plane. Yes, I know you've been watching." On speakerphone, Karim's voice crackled for all to hear. "Yusuf, please, tell me what we can do to fix this." "That," Yusuf replied, his tone cool and unshakable, "depends on whether Crescent Air believes religious discrimination is acceptable customer service." "Of course not," Karim said quickly. We absolutely condemn. Your employee, Yusuf cut in, just spent 25 minutes treating me like a security threat. She questioned my right to be here. She assumed I didn't pay for my ticket. She implied someone else was footing the bill. And she did it all in front of 400,000 livestream viewers. On the other end of the line, Kareem's silence stretched uncomfortably. In the background, the muffled voices of board members could be heard conferring in urgent tones. From 3C, the live streamer whispered, "Chat, CEO on speakerphone. This is history. This is better than TV," the live streamer whispered. Crescent Air getting destroyed in real time. "Yusuf," CEO Mahmoud Kareem said at last, his voice tight, "what do you need from us?" Yusuf turned his gaze directly to Holly Pearson, who was now crying openly in the aisle. "First," he said, voice like stone, "Miss Pearson is terminated immediately. Not suspended, fired. I will not do business with an airline that employs staff who discriminate against customers based on their religion." Holly gasped, but Daniel Cortez only nodded grimly. Her career was finished. "Second, I want a written guarantee that this behavior will not be tolerated at any level. This isn't just about one flight attendant. Your company culture allowed this to happen." "Done," Kareem said without hesitation. "What else?" "Third," Yusuf's tone turned ice cold. "I want to know how many other passengers Miss Pearson has treated this way." The demand landed like a lightning strike. Her entire service record would be audited. Every complaint, every comment, every whisper of discrimination exposed. "We'll conduct a full investigation," Kareem promised. "Not just an investigation," Yusuf clarified. "Every passenger she's wronged is to be contacted personally. They will receive an apology. They will receive compensation. They will get justice." Holly's knees buckled, and she sank into a nearby jump seat, knowing her past behavior was about to be laid bare. "Mahmoud," Yusuf continued, "here's what really concerns me. If your staff treat me this way, when I have resources, lawyers, and corporate leverage, how do they treat ordinary Muslim passengers who can't fight back?" The question pierced through the cabin air like a blade. "This isn't just about me. How many Muslim families have your crew made to feel unwelcome? How many passengers in hijab have been forced to prove they belong in first class? How many have been made to feel like security risks simply because of their name or their faith?" Kareem's voice was quieter now. "Yusuf, we are committed to addressing any pattern of discrimination." "Pattern?" Yusuf's tone sharpened. "This isn't a pattern, Mahmoud. This is culture. And culture starts at the top." Daniel Cortez glanced between them, watching his CEO be dismantled by the airline's most valuable corporate client. "Here's your choice," Yusuf said, his voice now pure boardroom finality. "Crescent Air can commit to real change, or Al Noor Holdings moves our $847 million annual contract elsewhere." The threat landed like a sword blade in the middle of the conversation. "Skylink Airlines called me this morning," Yusuf added. "They've offered better rates and written anti-discrimination guarantees. United Sky wants to meet next week. Eastern Air is restructuring their corporate program specifically to win our business." On the other end of the line, Kareem's breathing grew audible. "Yusuf, Crescent Air values our partnership tremendously." "Then prove it," Yusuf said. "What do you need?" Kareem asked, his voice almost pleading now. Yusuf looked around the cabin, at Holly Pearson sobbing in her seat, at Daniel Cortez's pale, sweating face, at the passengers still filming, at the live streamer broadcasting to 450,000 viewers. "I need to believe Crescent Air values all its customers equally, not just the ones who look like your executives." The accusation was surgical, devastating. "I need to trust," Yusuf went on, "that my employees, 430 of whom are Muslim, won't be humiliated when they fly your airline." Now the stakes were clear. This wasn't just business leverage. This was personal. "Here's what happens next," Yusuf said, his voice carrying over the silent cabin. "Miss Pearson is terminated effective immediately. Crescent Air issues a public apology acknowledging systemic religious bias. Your company implements mandatory anti-bias training with annual certification." "Agreed," Kareem said without hesitation. "Furthermore," Yusuf continued, "Crescent Air establishes a passenger advocacy office. Any discrimination complaint triggers an immediate investigation. Victims receive compensation. Offenders face real consequences." The livestream's comments scrolled at blinding speed. "This is history. That's how you handle Islamophobia." Pearson's career is done. The reforms rolled out like dominoes. "And finally," Yusuf said, I want quarterly diversity and inclusion reports published publicly. Transparency prevents recurrence. Yusuf, CEO Mahmoud Karim replied carefully. These changes will take time to implement properly. You have 90 days, Yusuf said without a hint of negotiation. 90 days to prove Crescent Air has changed. Fail to meet any deadline, and our contract is terminated immediately. The silence that followed was heavy. $450 million in annual profit now hung in the balance. And Mahmoud, Yusuf added quietly, tomorrow morning I vote on your $2.3 billion fleet expansion. My recommendation to the board will depend entirely on whether I believe Crescent Air deserves to grow. Karim's voice was barely audible. We understand completely. Yusuf ended the call and turned to Holly Pearson, who sat crumpled in her jump seat, mascara streaking down her face. Miss Pearson, in 25 minutes, you destroyed a 15-year career. You cost your company millions in potential revenue. You exposed systemic religious bias to nearly 500,000 viewers. His tone carried no anger, just cold precision. But most importantly, Yusuf continued, you revealed who you really are when you think no one important is watching. Holly sobbed openly now, her voice small. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Your apology, Yusuf replied, should go to every passenger you've ever made feel unwelcome because of their faith, not to me. From 3C, the live streamer's voice narrated to her massive audience. Chat, we just witnessed a masterclass in accountability. This man didn't just defend himself, he changed an entire airline's policies in real time. Her viewer count peaked at 475,000. The story would dominate news cycles for months. Captain Robert Hayes stepped forward one final time. Mr. Rahman, on behalf of Crescent Air's crew, I want to personally apologize. This does not represent our values. Yusuf studied him. Captain, your values are revealed through your actions. Tonight, your company's actions spoke very loudly. Daniel Cortez approached slowly. Sir, what can I personally do to ensure this never happens again? Yusuf's eyes met his. Start by asking yourself how many times you've witnessed discrimination and said nothing. Then commit to speaking up every time. Change doesn't come from policy memos. It comes when individuals choose courage over comfort. He gathered his documents and settled into seat 1A, the seat he had paid for, the seat Holly Pearson had tried to deny him. Ladies and gentlemen, Yusuf addressed the cabin, you've witnessed something important tonight. Discrimination has consequences. Bias has a price. And corporate accountability is possible when customers demand it. He looked directly into the live stream camera. To everyone watching, use your voice. Use your wallet. Demand dignity. Change happens when good people refuse to accept prejudice as normal. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been cleared for takeoff. Flight time to Karachi will be approximately 2 hours. As the engines spooled up, Yusuf opened his laptop to review tomorrow's board presentation. The fate of Crescent Air's expansion rested in Yusuf Rahman's hands. Holly Pearson had been fired. Systemic reforms were already in motion. Justice had been served. But the most important decision still lay ahead, and Yusuf held all the power. Flight 229 finally began its taxi toward the runway. In the cabin, passengers sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. The most documented case of airline religious discrimination in history had concluded with immediate corporate reform. Yusuf opened his laptop as the plane gained speed. His screen showed 47 news alerts about the incident. Hashtag Crescent Air bias was trending globally. CNN, Al Jazeera, BBC, and dozens more had already picked up the story. From 3C, the live streamer's audience had peaked at 500,000 concurrent viewers before she finally ended the feed. Her last words echoed across social media. Justice served at 30,000 feet. In the galley, Holly sat under security escort. Her 15-year career had ended in 25 minutes of exposed prejudice. But losing her job was only the beginning. Her actions would follow her for the rest of her life. Daniel Cortez approached Yusuf's seat cautiously. Mr. Rahman, I want to personally apologize again and update you on the immediate changes being implemented. Yusuf looked up from his laptop. What changes? Miss Pearson has been officially terminated. HR is reviewing her complete service record going back 5 years. Any passenger who filed complaints will be contacted personally. The systematic audit had already begun. Additionally, Daniel continued, CEO Karim has scheduled emergency anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff. Starting next week, Every employee must complete mandatory certification. Yusuf nodded in approval. What about the Passenger Advocacy Office? Being established within 30 days, reporting directly to the CEO. Any discrimination complaint will trigger an immediate investigation, with a guaranteed response within 48 hours. Yusuf's phone buzzed, a text from Mahmoud Karim. Board meeting moved to 7 a.m. tomorrow. Need your recommendation on fleet expansion before the market opens. The $2.3 billion decision couldn't wait. Crescent Air's future hung in the balance, and Yusuf controlled the outcome. He replied simply, I'll have my decision by morning. In the galley, another flight attendant, Sarah Malik, approached Daniel. Sir, I need to report something. I've witnessed Miss Pearson discriminate against passengers before. Multiple times. Daniel's face drained of color. How many times? At least 6 incidents in the past year, Sarah admitted. I stayed quiet because she was senior staff. I was wrong. The pattern was already emerging. Holly's behavior tonight wasn't an aberration, it was systemic. News of the incident had already reached Crescent Air's competitors. Yusuf's phone showed 3 missed calls from Skylink Airline's CEO, 2 from United Sky's head of corporate sales, and 1 from Eastern Air's president. Every major airline wanted Al Noor Holdings' business now. But Yusuf was thinking bigger than airline contracts. His laptop screen displayed a draft titled Corporate Dignity Initiative, a new standard for business travel. The incident had given him an idea that could change entire industries. Any company wanting Al Noor Holdings' business would need to meet strict anti-discrimination standards. Hotels, rental car companies, restaurants. Every vendor would be held to the same rules. Dignified treatment regardless of race, gender, religion, or appearance. Captain Hayes's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our descent into Karachi. Local time is 9:45 p.m. Yusuf glanced down at the glowing words on his laptop. The beginning of a policy that would ripple far beyond this flight. Holly Pearson's bias had accidentally sparked a movement. As passengers deplaned, several approached Yusuf personally. A Muslim businessman from economy class thanked him for standing up. A hijab-wearing woman shared her own story of being singled out for security checks while boarding. A white executive pledged to support the new anti-discrimination standards. Mr. Rahman, the businessman said, you didn't just fight for yourself tonight, you fought for all of us. Yusuf shook his hand firmly. Change only happens when people refuse to accept the unacceptable. The businessman nodded. I'm posting this story everywhere, every platform, every network. Local news crews waited at the gate. Yusuf declined full interviews, but issued a brief statement. Tonight proved that religious discrimination has consequences. Crescent Air has committed to systemic reform. I'll be monitoring their progress closely. He didn't mention tomorrow's board vote. That decision would remain private until morning. Behind him, Holly Pearson was escorted through security by Crescent Air officials. Her termination had been processed mid-flight, her corporate access revoked. Her aviation career was effectively over. Outside, Yusuf's driver waited with the company car. As they pulled away from the terminal, his phone lit up with hundreds of messages. Employees thanking him for defending their dignity, board members asking about the airline vote, media outlets requesting interviews, and civil rights organizations offering their support. But the most important message came from his daughter, studying abroad in London. Dad, I saw the live stream. You made me proud tonight. Love you. Back home, Yusuf sat in his study, reviewing the next morning's board presentation. The decision about Crescent Air's $2.3 billion fleet expansion would affect thousands of jobs and billions in revenue. But more importantly, it would send a clear message. Companies could no longer discriminate without consequences. His laptop screen showed the final list of reforms Crescent Air had agreed to. Immediate termination of Holly Pearson. Mandatory anti-bias training within 30 days for all customer-facing staff. Passenger Advocacy Office established within 30 days. Quarterly diversity reports published publicly. Personal apology from CEO Mahmoud Karim. Comprehensive audit of all discrimination complaints from the past 5 years. This wasn't lip service, it was real, measurable change. Corporate accountability in action. At 10:30 p.m., Yusuf made his decision about the fleet expansion vote. The choice would reshape Crescent Air's future and send a signal to every major company. Dignity was non-negotiable, and corporate clients had the power to enforce it. The next morning, the Crescent Air boardroom fell into hushed silence as Yusuf entered. 12 directors sat around the polished table, their faces tense with anticipation. CEO Mahmoud Karim stood immediately. "Yusuf, thank you for coming. I want to personally." "Let's focus on the vote," Yusuf interrupted calmly. He placed a single document on the table. The directors leaned forward, straining to see the words. After careful consideration of last night's events and Crescent Air's response, Yusuf said, "Al Noor Holdings will continue our partnership." Relief flooded the room. Karim allowed himself a small smile for the first time in 12 hours. However, Yusuf continued, with conditions. The transformation in the months that followed was remarkable. Crescent Air implemented every promised reform ahead of schedule. Employee discrimination complaints dropped by 89%. Customer satisfaction among Muslim passengers rose by 67%. As for Holly Pearson, she had been rehired by a small regional airline at a fraction of her former pay, with none of the authority she once wielded. Holly Pearson's story became a cautionary tale taught in business schools across the country. Travel Truth 47's original live stream of the incident had been viewed over 15 million times. She'd turned the viral moment into a successful passenger advocacy platform, helping travelers fight religious discrimination across the industry. Yusuf's corporate dignity initiative had spread far beyond airlines. Over 200 companies adopted the standards to win Al Noor Holdings business. Hotels began training staff on unconscious bias. Rental car companies established customer advocacy programs. Restaurants implemented dignity protocols to ensure no guest was ever treated as an outsider because of their faith, name, or appearance. The movement gained its own momentum. Competing corporations adopted similar standards to attract diverse clientele. Discrimination wasn't just morally wrong anymore, it was financially reckless. Yusuf received an invitation to speak at the Organization of Islamic Cooperation's Global Business Forum. His topic, How Corporate Power Can Drive Social Change. "A flight attendant taught me something important," he told the audience. "She showed me that bias still exists in spaces where we should feel welcome. But she also showed me something else, that we have the power to demand better." The hall erupted in applause. Every dollar you spend is a vote for the kind of world you want to live in. Every contract you sign is a statement about your values. Every business relationship is an opportunity to demand dignity. Crescent Air had become an industry leader in inclusive service. Discrimination complaints were now the lowest among all major carriers. Employee satisfaction rose. The company's stock price hit record highs. The Flight 229 incident was studied in MBA programs as a masterclass in stakeholder capitalism. Holly Pearson's behavior had accidentally sparked one of the most successful corporate reform movements in modern history. Yusuf Rahman proved that stories of discrimination don't have to end in defeat. These real-life events show us that quiet dignity can move mountains, that Muslim voices matter, and that standing against prejudice can transform entire industries. But this story isn't over. It continues every time someone refuses to accept discrimination. Every time a customer demands dignity. Every time a company chooses inclusion over bias. What's your story? Have you witnessed discrimination in travel, hospitality, or retail? Share your experience in the comments below. Your voice matters. Hit that share button if you believe dignity should be non-negotiable. Let others know that discrimination has consequences. Subscribe for more stories of quiet courage changing the world. Because when good people stand up, entire systems can transform. Your voice, your wallet, your story, they all have power. Use them.